Hey, how we doing? So we are on to set 3, Forever Evil. We're going to do exactly the same as we did last time. We're going to look at some of these things first, and then we're going to go through some of the cards that I think stand out in the set, um, and what are the key ones to kind of look out for, what might be one or two to avoid. The key thing about this set is it plays quite differently to the first two, which is not a bad thing. And it's in a way almost more exciting than the first two sets. However, you need to really change your play style when you play this version of the game slightly. Certain things that you kind of would expect to normally happen don't quite follow through in the same way in this game. It introduces the victory point mechanic, which, if you are having one of those games where you play to win against each other, it can make quite a difference. And there are some cards that specifically focus on that, that when you're mixing this set with other sets, it kind of dilutes that ability and they become not quite as good. However, we'll get onto that in a bit. So without further ado, the villains, because obviously we're playing supervillains in this version, not superheroes. And we are taking on superheroes, not supervillains, for the big points at the end of the game. So we will start with Harley Quinn. So Harley Quinn says, during each player's turn, the first time you pass or discard a card, draw a card. Obviously, the key word out of that is during each player's turn. So if for some reason you would discard a defense card, that would enable you to then draw a card, because it's any player's turn that you do that. So often you'll find this card is as useful on other players' turns as it is on yours. So while it's not the greatest card in the world, it's still effective, and one that whichever between me and my friends gets this card will always be happy with it. It's not a bad pick at all. Next one, Bizarro. Okay, so Bizarro says, when you destroy a card, gain a weakness. That's not a good start. And then it says, during your turn, you can put 2 weakness cards from your discard pile on top of the weakness stack. If you do, draw a card. So that's actually really good. There's an awful lot of cards in this set that give out weaknesses. So you often find that you're quite inundated. And the fact that you have the ability, well, when you destroy a card, you gain a weakness, allows you to sometimes trigger this to draw an extra card. It is not an easy card to play, and it takes 2 or 3 plays before you kind of get used to it and figure it out. But that is surprisingly good. And if you're playing in crisis mode and you're including things like this, that can be really mean. So well worth considering. But yeah, great card, Bizarro. Next one, Deathstroke. So Deathstroke says, +1 for each card you destroy during your turn. Now, this set, unlike the first two, although the second Heroes Unite does have a few card destruction cards in there, there are quite a few card destruction cards within this. However, you can only destroy so many of your cards. You'll get to the point in your deck where you go, I don't have anything I can destroy. So this card, in essence, is doing nothing for you. It's okay early, mid-game, for each card you destroy during a turn +1 power. Yeah, that's all right. But it doesn't give you the ability to destroy a card. So you're sat waiting for other cards to be able to do that. So in general, this card is not too hot. So yeah, not the greatest. Next, Black Adam. So Black Adam says, the first time you play a superpower during each of your turns, you may destroy it. If you do, draw a card and gain a victory point. Now, there are a number of superpowers in this set that work for a period of time in the game, and then you do want to probably get rid of them, the key of which is this thing here. So Word of Power says, when you destroy this card in any zone, you pay 4 less to defeat superheroes this turn. So if you've got Black Adam, and that's clearly his card, you can then play this card, destroy it, your superheroes cost 4 less to defeat, and you join a card, and you gain a victory point. Yeah, it just works. So again, not the easiest card to play, and you've not got to be too attached to some of your cards. if you imagine if early in the game you spend a lot of your power on buying things like kicks, he's going to enable you to get rid of those kicks mid and end game to draw an additional card, gain an extra victory point, and also filter your decks. Your deck's just full of the key cards that you need. So surprisingly good, Black Adam. Next one, Sinestro. Okay, so Sinestro says, and one or more foes fail to avoid an attack, you play, gain a victory point. That's decent. So clearly Sinestro wants to buy attack cards. And he also says the first time you gain victory points during each of your turns, draw a card. That's great. So if you play an attack, they fail to avoid it, you're going to gain a victory point. In addition, when you do, you draw a card. That's a no-brainer. Sinestro, really strong, really good card. There are plenty of cards within this set that you can buy to utilize that ability, and I suggest you do because he's really good. Next one, Black Manta. So Black Manta says you may put any cards you buy or gain from the lineup to the bottom of your deck. He's not my favorite. If I could pick any card from this set, I wouldn't pick him. So he's okay. He's a bit like Red Tornado. If you want a challenge, he's a decent card to play with. And depending on which cards you've got in your deck, he can be potentially quite good. If your deck's run out, that means you can put a card directly to the top of your deck and take it. But yeah, he's not great. Next one, Lex Luthor. So Lex Luthor says, at the end of your turn, draw an extra card for each hero you bought or gained during your turn. So kind of like Wonder Woman from the base set. There's plenty of heroes in this set. He's just good. He just works. He's not difficult to make work. You can keep buying heroes and keep getting an extra card so that the hand that you have on the following turn is stronger. Yeah, he's not necessarily helping you out on your turn, giving you more power. But if it was choice between a card that, say, gave you 2-3 power, or maybe is giving you 2 extra cards, 3 extra cards on your turn, it's a bit of a no-brainer. So Lex Luthor is just a good card, good, strong card. And last but not least for the supervillains, we have Bane. So Bane says, if the first card you play during each of your turns has cost 1 or greater, you may destroy it. If you do, +2 power. Now, at first read, you're kind of thinking, would I really want to do that? But as we showed previously with the Word of Power card, there are a number of cards within this set that once you've bought them and utilize their ability, really, you'd probably like to get rid of them. And the fact that you can get rid of them, play them first, gain their ability, destroy them, get them out of your deck, and then gain 2 power means that this is actually better than it first appears. Again, might not be the strongest supervillain in the set. It is, it's a card you should do well with. Maybe takes a couple of plays through first just to get used to it. But in general, Bane is better than it might first appear. So moving on to the cards. So there are a number of strong cards in this set. They're a bit of a no-brainer, so I'm not going to necessarily go through all those because some of the high-cost cards are just, why wouldn't you buy them? So I'll go through 1 or 2 just to give you an idea of some of the flexibility of some of the cards in this. So in terms of hero, we start with Element Woman. Element Woman costs 4 for 2 power. Meh, that's okay. But then says, while you own or are playing this card, it's also a superpower and an equipment and a villain. There are plenty of cards that look for triggers within this set and any of the sets, to be fair. She just ends up becoming useful. So even if you bought her early doors, this is a card that you'll often want in your deck end game because it will trigger so many other things, whether they be locations or other superpowers or equipment and so on. So Element Woman, I think, is a great little card. Next one, Phantom Stranger. Looks a little bit weird, a little bit leery. I wouldn't particularly want to meet this guy. So he basically says, for a cost of 5, you may destroy a card in your hand and you may destroy a card in your discard pile. That's just brilliant. It's just so good. You don't have to, so if you're not If you end up drawing a hand full of cards that are really good, you don't have to trigger that part. You can just focus on your discard pile. But the ability to take out for one card play 2 of the cards that you don't want is just speeding your deck up so much. There's only one of him in the set. If he appears, get him because he's that good. He also says at the end of the game, this card is worth 1 fewer victory point for each card with cost 0 in your deck. He's worth 10 victory points. And if you have him in your deck, the chances are you're not going to have many cards that have a cost that have victory points of 0 or less in your deck. He's bonkers. Next and last of the heroes is Firestorm. So Firestorm's a little bit different. He's not particularly cheap, costs 6, but he does say put the top card of your deck on your supervillain, and this card is the game text of each card on your supervillain. Now that is only when you play him, so it's not like the card you put in on your villain triggers every single turn, only when you play him. However, mid-game, end-game again, if you've done this 2 or 3 times, this is potentially a big card with an awful lot of versatility depending on what you've chose to destroy. And there are enough cards within the set that will allow you to manipulate the top of your deck, so the chances are you're going to get a good card there. So Firestorm, while he's not necessarily easy to use, is just really good and well worth a look. Next, villains. So I think in general the villains in this set are not the strongest. They are interesting, but not necessarily the strongest. But I think that kind of fits within the set, to be fair. So the first one is the Royal Flush Gang. So the Royal Flush Gang is kind of like Penguin from the original set, in which this costs 5, whereas Penguin costs 3. So it's a lot cheaper. This lets you draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, which is good. And you also gain 1 victory point for each of the Royal Flush Gang you play or have played this turn. That's okay. The chances are that won't trigger too often, and drawing 2 cards, discarding 2 cards is always useful. But for a cost of 5, I think you'll find that you often play this card and don't really see that sort of value from it. So it's okay, but it's certainly not the best. Next, Despero, another not particularly cheap card, costs 6, but he's just ridiculous. He's just great. So for a cost of 6, you're going to draw 2 cards. Why not? And then you choose a foe and you attack. That foe discards a card with cost 1 or greater. His cost 6 is great. Everything about this is great. Mess your opponent up, draw 2 cards. If he's about and you can afford him, there's only one of him in the set, buy it. Next, and I'll do these kind of together, we have this set of cards here. So these guys basically are all going to say a similar sort of thing. They're all quite expensive with costs of 6, 7, or 8. They allow you to destroy either an equipment, a hero, a villain, or a card in the lineup, and then you gain +1 power for each of those different cards in the destroy pile. So for example, destroy an equipment, +1 for each equipment in the destroy pile. That's different. Same for heroes, same for villains. And the last one, Ultraman, which costs 8, which really isn't cheap, is you get +1 for each different superpower in the destroy pile. They're expensive, and I think generally what I've found is occasionally they really do work and you get decent power from them, but often these really don't work. They're really not that hot, and they tend to not be my first choice of cards that I go for when the villains are in the lineup. So just think carefully before you buy those. Next, let's go on to locations. So the locations are all pretty standard in this. These locations give you +1 for each of that card that you play. So again, as with most of the sets, there's generally more heroes and equipment in this set than other sets. So Happy Harbor, this is the one for heroes, cost 5, ongoing, +1 for each hero you play. No brainer. It's just going to give you extra power. You're just going to keep buying heroes from the lineup, and each of those heroes now has an additional text, +1 power. Why wouldn't you? And then the same, Star Labs does exactly the same, but for equipment. But again, in Forever Evil, there's an awful lot of equipment. It's going to trigger a lot. It's going to be worth plenty of power to you. So again, if Star Labs is there, just buy it. Next, equipment, for which I said there's already quite a lot in this set. and it's quite varied. There's a lot of card destruction. So yeah, it's a different strategy with these cards. But here's some of the more interesting ones that I think are worth a look for. First of all, Mallet. Mallet costs 4. He says reveal the top card of your deck, draw it, cool, or pass it to any player's discard pile. So if you get this early game and mid game when you've still got an awful lot of cards that you really don't want, this allows you not only, in essence, to destroy it for you, is to give that to someone else. Yeah, it's just a fantastic card. In things like Crisis, again, really, really versatile, can do an awful lot for you. The Mallet for me is always a no-brainer. Next, Cosmic Staff. Cost 5, 2 power. So if you play on your turn, it's okay. But its defense is you can discard this to avoid an attack. And if you do, gain the bottom card of the main deck. So you're gaining a card for free. Okay, it may not be perfect. It may not be the card you want, but it's not cost you anything. Sometimes you'll get cards that are just almost adding to cards that you don't want. But a lot of the time within this set, you're going to get cards that just add to your victory points, add to really what you need. So Cosmic Staff, out of all the defense cards in this set, I think that's probably the choice, to be honest. Next one, Broadsword. So this is a card that costs 6. It gives you +2 power, which is not good for 6, but it also allows you to choose a 4, and you attack, and then you choose and destroy a card that costs 1, 2, or 3 in that 4's discard pile. Clearly, they're going to want to defend against this because this is going to let you take out maybe their defense cards, which is what I generally pick on as a first choice if they're in there. But obviously other key cards that they're really going to need to make their decks fire and let them afford or manipulate their major cards within their deck. So Broadsword, while it's not cheap, costs 6, is a really good card and an absolute pain for your opponents. So if Broadsword's there, generally just get it. And then last but not least in the equipment, I've just chosen the most expensive one because it's bonkers. And if you can afford it, you just buy it. It's the Power Armor. Cost 8, 3 power. So you're not getting a massive amount of power for that, but 3 power is nothing to sniff at. However, it is a defense card and it's just a brilliant defense card. You can reveal this card from your hand to avoid an attack. So avoid an attack, avoid an attack. You just keep doing that. You're not discarding it. And in addition, if you do that, you can destroy a card in your hand or discard pile. So if your opponent has a turn in which he has several attacks and you defend with this once, he really has a problem of, do I really want to play all my attack cards knowing that you're simply going to filter your deck and get rid of all those cards? It's just one of those cards that is very frustrating for your opponents, which means it's definitely a good card to get. And then last but not least, we'll look at the superpowers on this set. So again, just to reiterate, we'll start with Words of Power because there's 2 or 3 cards in the whole deck like this. This is one of those cards that's very cheap, costs 1, but when you destroy it, that's when you gain the ability from it. And when you destroy this particular one, you pay 4 less to defeat superheroes this turn. And the actual wording within the whole game, in case you mix this with other sets, I think it's classified as any superhero or any supervillain, I believe now. But to make a supervillain or superhero cost 4 less puts it well within reach of being able to take that card out. So Words of Power for a cost of 1. You don't want to see it all the time because sometimes you don't want to take out the superheroes, but it's just decent. So I think you always need at least one of those in your deck. Next one of my favorite superpowers from the set is Transmutation. It costs 5. You can destroy a card in your hand or discard pile and gain a victory point. You may gain a card from the lineup of equal or lesser cost to the card you destroy this way. So if, for example, you destroy a kick in your discard pile, you remove it, you gain a victory point, and then if there's any 3-cost cards in the lineup, because that was the cost of the kick, you can gain that card and it'll go into your discard pile. You're getting rid of cards that you really don't want and improve them. You don't have to do that, so you can still just get rid of cards and gain a victory point. But Transmutation is a top card. And then the last card is a no-brainer. This card basically says, go away, just let me win and shut up. So Ultra Strength, Not cheap, costs 9, so that's the same price as a supervillain, or in this case, a superhero would be for this set. But he does say +3 power, draw 2 cards. It's just great. It's just brilliant. If it's there, you buy it, because with this card, every time you play it, you have a great turn. So it's a no-brainer. So yeah, Ultra Strength, buy it, enjoy it, frustrate your opponents. That's Forever Evil. Next, we'll be looking at, I'm not decided quite yet whether to do Dark Knight Metal or Teen Titans. I'm not sure, but that'll be coming up soon anyway. So again, thanks for watching. Any feedback, please add it. All right, catch you soon. Bye.